Let me hit the button. Okay, so here we are in the ring world, as we call it internally, inside the stranger. And one of the big events in the time loop, actually, you know what? I should just do it instead of talking about it. You guys can see what this is.
You really have a button for it?
We sure do.
Oh. Wow. The power you have.
Yeah.
So one of the things we did with this is we wanted to make sure that as the wave passed through the entire ring, it felt like it was, physically destroying the environment. So I'll talk about that a little later. But as you can see, there are particle effects that play when it hits certain buildings. We have animation curves for them falling over. And, we have some physics objects that get detached. And I'll just speed up time so you can see the rest. Another little thing we have actually. Yeah, so there it goes. That's the flood. So back in the editor, let me talk about the shader going on here. Okay, so the Ringworld River is one of the most complex shaders in the entire game. Surprise, surprise, it uses a version of the tessellated sphere renderer, except this is a tessellated ring renderer. Ooh. So it has the same sort of thing where if you're close to it, the geometry is more dense. If you're far away from it, the geometry is sparse, which is really useful when you can see up to the other side of the river all the time. And it was important that we did this because really early on, like Wesley said, we decided that we wanted there to be a whole river you can raft through. So, it's a natural fit that we, retrofitted some of our technology for this. Anyway, the shader is really complex, and I believe it has 14 different textures. And the reason we use so many is that we have a bunch of elongated textures that determine the visuals of the river at different points along the ring. So they start here, and they're mapped all the way around and end at the dam again. You can see some of them over here. Basically, we have a bunch of data packed into different channels for these elongated textures to determine the visuals, like, where should the foam show up? What way should the current flow visually? Or, what should the particulate color of the different areas be like? You can see in here, it's a little bit greener than over here where it's bluer in the reservoir. And so, for example, we have a bunch of different maps for that. And the reason that we have two of them is because the river changes in the pre and post flood states. So do a cool thing here. We can do the flood lerp, which side effect of it is that you can see the flood going along in the editor. But what this does is this is how it chooses what point along these textures to blend. So it lerps between them. If the wave is here, it uses this area would be the post flood, and all the rest of the ring would be the pre-flood until it goes all the way around, and then everything is using the post-flood textures. Yeah, so that's pretty technical, but I thought it was cool. Another thing going on is we have the flow maps for the direction that the waves scroll, and these are baked from the physical currents that the designer set up. So it should, it feels correct without us having to try to do some weird UV trickery or something. And then, like Wesley explained with the ocean and Giant Steep, we have 4 textures, which in themselves have 4 monochrome textures that determine the way that the waves look. So we have basically the chop one, we repurposed that slot for the rapids. And then we have a macro, main, and micro waves slot. And the texture basically cycles between using the red channel of all these, the green, and then the blue, and the alpha, and so on. So you can see the waves changing over time. And it's, it feels more organic and physical than if there was just, the same texture handling along the whole thing. Another cool thing that we do with these is they have different weights based on the flow speed, I believe. So in here, you'll see the waves are more spread out. But if you go to the reservoir pre-flood, you can see that the waves are a lot more linear and calm, and that's because the flow speed in here is different. So the the look of the river changes as you go along the ring, which is neat.
Is there a way to visualize the flow, especially around the part where it splits into the canyon?
I think so. When I turn gizmos on, you can see the currents. I think if I select one of these, is this what you mean?
Yeah.
Kinda like that. Yeah. So these are the currents that the designer set up, and they're very specific to make sure you don't get stuck in places, or you see like a hint of a certain building depending on where you're going.
So what is the blue and the red telling us here? There's some blue, some red.
I know the blue is currents. The red.
So they're both currents.
Pre and post flood?
It's pre and post flood.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
yeah.
cool.
Yeah. You can see by the height.
Okay.
These are lower. These are higher. Yeah. So that's why we have two sets.